Hello, welcome to episode 1 of the Dungeon Podcast, brought to you by Antifragile Fitness. I'm head coach Arthur Mena, also known as Arthur Dane in some circles. With me are coaches Andrew Vocal and Jake Madden. All right, guys, first time. So, what's this podcast all about? Well, Antifragile Fitness is a fitness company that was started in 2022, January of last year. It is the culmination of 10 years of research, experience, and one-on-one coaching with great coaches in the respective fields of fitness. Under the moniker Arthur Dane, I started a page called Blood and Rain. It was a content page, much of which was rooted in fitness, amongst other ideas. Taking these training methodologies and putting it into one core methodology that is fluid and flexible but holds true to its core principles, saw rapid success in my own training personally, and saw rapid success in others when we handed out some free programs to other content creators. Over time, we decided that this should be an online training business where we do a step-by-step coaching program for a kind of fitness that is rooted in performance, rooted in mental toughness, and rooted in methodologies that will never break when pressure is applied. Hence the name Anti-Fragile. The book by Nassim Taleb that presents the idea that in the English lexicon, there is no word that is opposite to fragile. We have words like robust. We have words like tough. These are middle of the road. Real opposite of fragile means that you will get better with pressure. You will get better with randomness. And that's what we seek to do with our fitness inside the gym and outside of the gym. Over time, two former clients turned into coaches, and we are all living in a house together, refining the methodology, refining our research, and applying our methods to ourselves, our clients, and the human populace beyond. So what is exactly anti-fragile fitness per se? Well, it's a fitness that covers something that's been thrown around as hybrid athletics, but it goes a bit beyond that. If you scan the greater sphere of Instagram and sometimes TikTok and sometimes Twitter and sometimes YouTube, hybrid athletics is typically presented as a 1 foot in cardio sports and 1 foot in strength sports. Now, strength sports, it's typically either bodybuilding or powerlifting. And the other side of things, it is marathon running or being a triathlete. Now, some people might mistake this with CrossFit, but CrossFit is a game within itself. It's a bunch of standards of workouts that originated in a style of training found in the US military. So it's not necessarily a getting absurdly strong and getting absurdly fast. It's just being good at a sport of fitness. These are two very different things when you break these down in terms of programming. Now, anti-fragile fitness seeks to make individuals that are sound for military service, that are sound for the ring, that are sound for the vigors of professions like being a first responder, or maybe even being an entrepreneur who tackles the day-to-day grind of both his business and jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai or archery or what have you. The bulk of our clientele is currently fighters, first responders, and soldiers, and we don't see that changing anytime soon because they have a need for fitness that is never going to fail them in a bunch of random high-pressure scenarios, hence the need to be anti-fragile. However, when we're discussing beyond hybrid athletics, we do have an ideal of what every man should be capable of physically and mentally. A man should be able to lift absurd amounts of weight in many different patterns. A man should be of a great body composition, lean and muscular for the sake of his health. A man should be fast. A man should have an unending gas tank. He should be flexible so he doesn't get injured so easily, and he should be lethal. He should be capable of as The great Pat McNamara has said both life-saving and ass-kicking. When we take a look at our society, particularly in the United States, but not only the United States, in the West, the greater West itself, we see a decline of men. We see men who are no longer rooted in the martial ideal. We see men who have grown comfortable. We have seen men who grow soft. And as a result, we see a competency crisis. There are many people out there who are providing theories as to what's gone wrong in society and some solutions in a grandiose sense ideologically, but we haven't seen a practical application on force multipliers, on what can create a class of martially rooted men, once again, both inside and outside of the military, and inside and outside of the ring, and inside and outside of the gym. That is our mission statement. That is Anti-Fragile Fitness. Now, one of the very first clients who ever joined is Andrew Vocal, who has amassed quite a following on social media, and the moniker I won't get into just now. But let's start from the very beginning, Andrew. What had you join Anti-Fragile Fitness from the start, and what were you expecting, and what were you presented with?
My initial interest in Anti-Fragile Fitness came primarily just from your podcast and your writing, which is how I first found you. And I didn't know as much about your training until I think I followed you for 5-6 months. But that was right around when you started promoting it. Before that, you hadn't really mentioned it much. It was like the occasional one-off comment about you do training, you do programming for friends. So yeah, I was one of your first real clients, and I think what really attracted me was, one, the ethos behind your writing, your podcast, about the reasons for your training, the mindset behind your training, the goals of your training, and that being a training that was functional, that was athletic, that was martial, that was something more than just aesthetic, something more than just bro lifting, something that could give you some long-term dedication. And I mean, going into it, I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know what I was getting myself into necessarily, but it worked out great. I'm very happy with it.
So what surprised you when you first joined? Like what were you presented with that was like that you enjoyed, that you hated, that you were surprised was effective?
I think what surprised me the most was how little I understood the reasoning behind what we were doing initially. A lot of the strength training didn't make sense to me at first. Some of the lifts that we were doing didn't make sense to me at first. Over time, I came to understand how that was prepping me for certain improvements in athleticism and functionality and flexibility, all that. But yeah, initially what I was expecting was just kind of the standard bro lifting program, the kind of thing I've been programming for myself. And I was pretty unaware of the world of knowledge and of other ways to train that there were.
Yeah, it's I mean, in the West, there's only so much you can really be presented with in terms of like fitness influencer. There are some guys in the fringes who are doing like much more high IQ stuff. That's really impressive. Like the first one that comes to mind is Tom Holland. He's like one of the disciples of Josh Bryan over at Jailhouse Strong. And Jailhouse Strong, in terms of just an ethos, my ethos, or our ethos now, isn't really like Jailhouse Strong. It's less sort of fun, less kind of old school punch you in the mouth. But at least they had an ethos, and I found that really interesting. And I had sort of developed an ethos personally that kind of bled through with Blood and Rain, but I also noticed like the way it applied to training sort of manifests itself a bit differently. And so, when you see the Fitfluencer stuff, it's a lot of bodybuilding. It's a lot of like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Dorian Yates worship, and obviously we like the latter more than the former, but not really a lot of like IP in terms of what to do. So that was definitely something we were after. Earlier this year, an Englishman by the name of Jacob Matten, actually on New Year's, joined Anti-Fragile Fitness with some very specific goals in mind, and he sort of took it and ran with it. So, what first attracted you to Anti-Fragile Fitness in the first place, Jake?
Well, I think to go back to where I was in that sort of frame of year, that time frame, there was December 2022, I competed in my second amateur powerlifting competition. Right, I totaled out just over 1,000 pounds. at 160.
160 is the equivalent like in pounds weight class. Yeah.
I think so. I think it was about 160.
Yeah.
I was 78 kilos.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was probably just north of 160, maybe 170. I'm not sure. But I know my total was 1,035 pounds. And so I didn't really know where I wanted to take my training. I knew I needed to cut down. I had some vague ideas for goals in terms of where I wanted to take my training in terms of running, long distance running, and I knew where I wanted to take my training in terms of becoming more explosive and less focused on just the big three powerlifting movements. Before that, I really trained a lot of powerlifting and traditional powerlifting training, squat, bench, deadlift, split. Before moving to a more unique program where I wasn't running any one muscle group on any one day. I was training 4 full body days a week that were more focused on different systems, which is a training style I do prefer. And at that time, I'd spent a lot of time in isolation. And so I didn't really have an outside influence. And I didn't really know what to do with my training. And I'd seen a few of your things. And I'd not really done much deep diving into your podcast. I'd listened to a few episodes, definitely the first and second.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's actually both are pretty on the nose of this. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact point I decided to join. I remember we hopped on the call, and I was sort of making the decision in my head, mapping it out there. But I really just joined because I wanted something new, and I was very tired of those sort of same powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift programs. And I'd just gone back to like a push-pull leg split, and I was training a lot of things to failure. And it was a case of like I do these and I do as many of like as much heavier weight as I can. A sort of like thuggish yet somewhat effective way of working out that I really like mentally, but is shit for you physically.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a lot to be said mentally for those type of workouts, but I think as Mike Mensa said, the gym is not, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it's not a competition of who can endure the longest when you're doing, you know, 8 drop sets in a row, dumbbell hammer curls to failure. It's a place to force adaptations, and that's what we're trying to do. And that's what I really, really enjoyed about the antifragile, the programming that I was given at that point was this case of like, no, these are the specific goals. We're trying to do nothing more and nothing less.
Yeah, copy that. In terms of results, like within the first year, I mean, you haven't finished your first year, Jake. How was the first 6 months, Andrew? What results were you surprised with?
I think the results I was the most surprised with were probably the gains I made just in functional movements, functional lifts. Like for example, like a get up, the gains we made there. Also just athleticism. That was one of my big goals coming in. I was really stiff when I came in, really immobile. Which I mean, that's something that we still work on, but it was much worse over a year ago. And so yeah, I was really happy to see really quick improvement in my flexibility, athleticism, speed, and then functional movement patterns was huge. I was not expecting to hit 100-pound get up the first year.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the first. That's like the first like big AFF milestone for guys is getting to 100-pound. We don't say Turkish get up around here. We say Byzantine get up. We're not going to answer why. Getting to 100-pound Byzantine get up. Like I feel like that's the first big milestone of. Just sort of intro to old time strongman movements. Intro to like max effort stuff for combat. Rotational plane or transverse plane as it's called. And what about body composition wise?
Body comp wise, that was something that hypertrophy lifting I had a little bit of experience with before, but not a lot. I did lose a lot of weight that first year, which is interesting because that was never our primary goal.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just a byproduct.
Yeah,
and that's our goal for all of our clients. Really, is that aesthetics is going to be a byproduct. It's a good byproduct, but it's never going to be the primary focus. Especially with becoming more athletic and more flexible, I found that it became a lot easier to take off fat.
Yeah.
Just yeah, like the more mobile your body becomes, the more functional it becomes. It does seem to be the case. I don't specifically know the exact reasonings behind that, but your body will respond differently when you're mobile, when you're functional.
Yeah, I mean, like higher stress stimulus and more patterns, higher thermogenic factor, you're gonna burn more calories. You're gonna burn more fat. You're gonna live a leaner existence.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. What about you, Jake? You came out the gate storming the first 8-week program that you did. Well, what were your surprise results was?
My biggest immediate surprise, first, like sort of, we're talking first 4 weeks, first maybe even 2 weeks in, was that despite working out, putting as much effort into these workouts as I could, as much effort into my training, I wasn't sore outside of like the first few hours of finishing training. Like, you walk out the gym, you've done leg day, yeah, it's a bit sore, but like I would expect that like 24, 36, 48-hour DOMs to kick in and nothing. And it's the weirdest thing because I'm looking at that like day 3 mark and I'm like, okay, here it comes. Here comes the leg aches. And then I'm hit with nothing. And that was weird. Because that really allowed me to work on a lot of other things that I needed to work on that normally, would be slowed down by the fact that just not physical things necessarily, but, even just like studying and researching, and you're sat there and it's like, oh, my legs ache a little bit and that's getting in the way. And that's a mindset I really like is because people romanticize this idea of struggle in a really unique way, I think. And they have this idea of guys that go to the gym and then, they're working a labor job. It's like, he's still getting after it. I'm going to use Jocko Willink phrasing. He's still getting after it with his, his fucked up legs from leg day. He's been working out hard and now he's going to go lay bricks or he's going to go be a plumber or whatever he's doing. And it's like, yeah, but imagine how much better that guy could be if he didn't have to. He still applies that same intensity, but doesn't have the aches.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the immediate benefit for me. Was not only were the workouts fun, they weren't boring, which was a nice change from what I was doing. I come from a training background, at least, where I'm very used to these high rep range body weight programs. Where I would routinely be doing north of. I had some weeks where I was doing like multi, throughout the day push-up programs and stuff like that, where you end up doing like 1,000 push-ups a day. It's like, what am I doing? More push-ups. Okay, cool. And again, there's that level of romanticized, like I've done 1,000 push-ups, and the benefit of doing 1,000 push-ups isn't even that I've done 1,000 push-ups. It's that I've had to mentally endure through 1,000 push-ups, and that will give you a bigger mental push than having the ability to do 1,000 push-ups. But there is also, the claim to be made that it's like there's ways to train that mean you enjoy training, and when you enjoy something, you will do it harder. And that's what was happening within that first couple of weeks. Was training was fun, training was good, and I wasn't sore, which made training even better. And then I noticed I was losing weight at a rapid pace that I wasn't expecting.
We're talking fat here, not losing muscle.
Yeah, I was losing fat.
Good clarification.
I was losing fat at a rapid pace that I wasn't expecting to lose. Despite not really even, increasing my diet. And, yes, I was increasing my physical activity from that point, but not by much. So it does go to show that does happen when you switch to a more intelligent training basis. And then I decided on a whim, because we do, and I won't be elaborating further, to max my deadlift. This was not advised by anyone.
This is firmly off protocol.
This is
not
expressly and purposefully off protocol. And my deadlift had stayed the same despite doing no deadlift work in 8 weeks.
And how much weight were you down? Like physically?
I was down north of 16 pounds, 8 kilos.
Yeah,
I went down to 70 kilos and my deadlift didn't move.
It stayed exactly the same, rock solid.
And actually, my deadlift got better. Like, my deadlift was faster, it felt easier. And I didn't move up on that specific day because I made a point of pausing the deadlift. So it was actually not really even a 1 rep max, it was a pause deadlift.
Wow.
So, and then I went to Ivory Coast, which we'll just briefly brush over.
And we should also note too that you started marathon training, because one of the things that you talked about was excessive training for marathon. So lost body fat, gain muscle, up the deadlift, and up endurance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I returned to continue training. I wasn't able to train while I was away due to the work that I was doing. So I returned to training. I was still fit. I was still, good. I didn't lose that much weight in the 3 weeks that I was off training. Neither did I lose strength. But what I found was that my physique had changed both during training and then further whilst I was away. I'd lost a little bit more fat, which was nice. Then I decided again at the end of the next 8-week block to max out. And I found that again, despite doing no deadlift work, I should, outside of deadlift variations, I do RDLs in my training. I do a couple of other deadlift, I do rack pulls. But I'd done no quote unquote deadlift work, no conventional deadlift work. And my deadlift had again improved to the point where I failed a 240 kilo deadlift and a 220 because I didn't really time them right. So I feel like this is a stupid excuse. Strength was there, but did not complete the lift, which means no lift. So, but again, I did lift 200 kilos despite doing no deadlift work at that point, probably a solid 3 months. All in, including Ivory Coast, and the time I wasn't training between my competition and joining on the AFF.
Wow. Yeah. See, these are things I'm forgetting too, because it's been a bit, and life event wise, since that time, Andrew and I have both gotten married to wives, not each other. Someone almost got confused the other day about that. Yeah. I mean, so honestly, like I kind of knew this kind of training was effective. I should sort of go into where this training comes from. My sort of physical culture journey started playing football when I was really young. I was a quarterback through middle school. Then I went to a very rich private high school, and I did not get along with anyone there. And I decided not to play football, and I ran track instead. It was a very storied track program. I ran the 800 meter. I was getting very fast. Then I was about to get kicked out of high school for stuff involving brawling. And so I left before they kicked me out, and I transferred. And due to section rules, I couldn't run. I couldn't run varsity, so I actually switched back to singing and acting that I had done my entire life leading up to high school. And that brought me to a drama school in the UK for my bachelor's. And while I was doing a lot of these movement classes that I actually found really enlightening, where that actually apply a lot of their methods to AFF programming. So I guess that's the first place where AFF programming comes from. It's actually drama school of all places in terms of stretching, mobility, movement patterns, focus on the pelvis, whatnot. But I needed to do something more intense. I needed to do something actually athletic. So I wound up walking into what was one of the best Muay Thai gyms in the UK. And I threw 2 punches and a kick. And I just, classic 1-2 right low kick, and I was hooked. And I decided I wanted to do that every day for the rest of my life. And a few days after that, unfortunately, I had to leave the UK and I moved back to the Bay Area where I'm from. And I was in someone's couch, and I didn't have access to any Muay Thai gym. I had no car. The only thing I had was a weights gym, and I started just putting putting my face into the weights, and I wound up finding this guy who I bugged him until he trained me. He's a Tennessee State champion bodybuilder and powerlifter. And it was on the horizon that I'd be able to train martial arts again. So I said, I want to be a pro fighter. I need a strength and conditioning coach for it. And he just kind of looked at me with wide eyes that I should be a bodybuilder. He said I had the perfect muscle bellies. I had the good height for it. Successful bodybuilders are usually between 5'10" and 6'1". Arnold Schwarzenegger was a bit of an anomaly with the 6'2" height. And he gave me programming that was very clearly not conducive to being a fighter, being able to move well. I gained absurd amounts of muscle, absurd amounts of strength, but it just wasn't being put into pathways that were conducive to being a martial artist. So I sought out another coach. Actually, I sort of stumbled upon his gym, his old, very dungeon-esque gym. As an aside, The first dungeon that I ever sort of visited was the legendary dungeon of Dorian Yates before it closed in Birmingham. It was in the center of the city, you know, the old medieval part of the city near Cathedral Hill, and you kind of stumble upon this alleyway and walk down these stairs in this terrifying horror movie looking dungeon of a gym. And I turn to my right and I see a picture of Dorian Yates 6 months out from a competition. I said, "What the hell is that?" All right, well, that's cool. I love this dungeon, but I don't think I'm trying to be a bodybuilder like that. So I just left and went back to the Muay Thai gym. Um, so um, back to this second dungeon back in California. The man who owned this gym got a contract with Bellator to fight middleweight, and before that, he was a kettlebell expert, an old-time strongman, and before that, he played D1 football and a Pac-12 team, and he was a kinesiology major. So I learned an absurd amount of training from this guy. Taught me the get up, taught me the bent press. Actually, he just taught me the get up, and he taught me a bunch of other movement patterns that were really vital for me to open up if I wanted to be strong and a fighter. And there was one moment I had with him that really stuck out to me that just sort of blew my mind. It was fight week for him, and he had just done his weigh-in, and he was 210 walk around weight, fighting at 185. It's a tough cut. And I saw him after the weigh-in, and I said, "Are you gonna take it easy the rest of the day?" He's like, "No, I'm still gonna train today, and I'll train tomorrow before the fight too." And I just thought he was a lunatic. And he just said, "I'm more like an old-time strongman. The practice is every single day. When you have showtime, you have showtime. And tomorrow happens to have a showtime too." And that really shifted my perspective to it just being a praxis, like a daily praxis of physical culture. It's almost a daily duty of physical culture. Um, I had to leave that gym just due to finances, and I wound up going to a cheaper dungeon gym in a really bad part of town. Truth be told, I found out later that in another part of the building there was a whorehouse upstairs, and I saw men literally chased with machetes in broad daylight on 4th of July on the street in front of this gym. So it was a very bad part of town. Um, but I got programming from an old-time strongman and former Div 1 wrestler who I saw a video of on Instagram doing a 205-pound Byzantine get-up with a barbell. I just lost my mind at the prospect of knowing that this is possible. And I saw a lot of the rotational work he was doing, and I didn't fully understand why yet at the time, but having trained with the previous gym, I knew that this programming was conducive both to what's called dynamic effort and max effort. So I got programming for him for a little bit, and then I switched to programming from a former NFL player and more athletic training coach, good sprint coach, working more on explosion. And then I got injured. I was doing stupid shit, honestly. That's why I didn't get injured in the gym. I had saved money by working 90-hour weeks behind the bar for 2 months to move to New York City. And before that period, I had a 550 deadlift. So I'd regularly carry kegs up and down the stairs. But I hadn't deadlifted for 8 weeks. And then come 10 weeks, I have a job in New York City at a bar, and we have kegs. And I think I got this, and I didn't have it. And my lower back on the right side went click. So I sought out, when I moved back to California, actually, you didn't even seek him out. I kind of just bumped into this guy who was a physical therapist. He gave me a few pointers, and I couldn't afford to hire him at the time because getting a shit job back in Oakland, I was below the poverty line. And I started sort of piecing some things together to rehab my own lower back injury and studying rehabilitation on my own. And I successfully rehabilitated my own lower back. I got myself back in shape. Come 2020, I was working full-time as a cocktail bartender and bar manager, and working 30-hour weeks to rehab my lower back. I got my strength levels back up, my endurance, and I had the perfect schedule to begin taking fights. 2020 was supposed to be the year. And then Uncle Gavin Newsom shuts down the bars, and I have $3,000 of overhead living in California, and I have nowhere to get money from. And I did not take unemployment. It just goes against every fiber of my being. So I worked overnight security 2 hours each way of a commute, still below the poverty line, continually sleep deprived and malnourished. But during this time, I started to study books upon books upon books of the greatest sports scientists of all time. and I learned the principles, the core principles of the human body in training, and plugged all the previous styles I had learned under these respective masters into these principles. And I was able to put hundreds of pounds on my lifts despite being sleep deprived and malnourished consistently, 2020 through 2021. And now that methodology was applied to anti-fragile fitness in a sort of precursor year in 2021 into 2022 to where we are now. The training is ever evolving. We have an extensive block of research that we're doing every single day. We have about 40 guys under a tutelage. We have first responders. We are getting people ready for special forces selection. We have heavyweight MMA fighters. We have MMA fighters who also have 600-pound deadlifts. We are getting people ready for marathons. We are healing dislocated shoulders. We've healed slap tears. We've healed lower backs. We have done a lot in a short period of time. And now we are all together in one house in England. And we are living the life, and we are applying the research to this methodology, and we are documenting it. And we are every week at this time, 5:30 London time, on Thursday, we will be discussing a particular topic of fitness and our applications. We'll do the Some Odd Ask Us Anything podcast. And you'll get to see what's under the hood of anti-fragile fitness, what's going into the latest and greatest programs. Before we end things, Jake, Andrew, anything to add?
No, all good.
Oh, good.
All right. Well, we'll have a lot more to say in the next episode and the episodes beyond that. If you're interested in joining Anti-Fragile Fitness, you can find us on Instagram at anti.fragile.fitness. Our website's about to go up as well, and you can shoot us a DM here on YouTube or post something in the comments. The join links will be in the description shortly. See you in the next one. Thanks, guys. God bless. Happy training.